Hello and welcome back to Dreamcatcher Radio. As I said to you, I'm trying to bring as many stories from boots on the ground from around the world. I'm pleased to be joined today by Michael, who is a Brit. Michael, do you still describe yourself as a Brit? Or
I certainly do, mate. I'm
okay,
as I'm as English as they come.
okay, and he lived in Sweden, I believe, for 40 years. Is that correct?
Just under 40 years. I moved there in '86, became a permanent resident in '89.
Fantastic. Now, Michael, obviously we had a chat off air during the week, and what I thought was going to be a 10-minute conversation ended up being pretty much an hour. And even
Oh.
then, we could talk for a lot longer. Now, tell us a little bit about yourself, because what the topic I really want to talk about, which I believe is very, very important, but you're a performer, or do you call yourself an artist, or well, how do you describe yourself? Because
Uh,
you're a busy guy and you've traveled the world doing what you do. So can you just tell
yeah,
us what you do and where you've been and that sort of journey?
yeah. Well, primarily, I'm a Rod Stewart impersonator and lookalike. That's how I started out. I was in a rock band, but I crashed my motorbike in 1989, and I spent a year in hospital. So we were a glam rock band in Sweden. Two of the guys are still with us. Two of them were assassinated driving the bikes, and one was blown up by a grenade in Sweden, of course, because they joined opposite motorbike gangs. We'll go down that road in a short while. I've been around the world 6 times as Rod. I mean, literally around the world. I've performed in 37 countries, 6 tours in New Zealand, two in Oz, residency in Las Vegas. I've performed in Los Angeles, Thailand, Argentina, Peru, Panama, Dubai, Bahrain, pretty much everywhere in Europe. I've done 20 residencies in Mallorca, where two of my daughters were born. That's for another story about how the Spanish treat the British after Brexit. I'll never set foot on that part of the world again. Two residencies in Cyprus, and now I'm full time back in Sweden doing what I should do, being a father, recording music, original music, which I've sold a lot of, and that all goes to different charities. And I rescue dogs. So my passion in life now is my children and rescuing dangerous dogs. Otherwise, I've done a couple of books which are coming out this year. One which is called Princess Luna Wag the Tail, which is about pit bulls that come from another planet who can actually talk. If you think about Highlander with 4 legs, that's pretty much that. And the book I've just finished now is called Old Broken Dino Alone, a COVID Legacy. I think that's self-explanatory what that is. I'll be continuing to perform, but only in Scandinavia and the United Kingdom. I've had enough of touring. It's cost me far too much on a personal level, divorces and lost time with my kids. And I think sooner or later you come to the realization that, okay, you might be good at what you do, but other things in life should take priority, i.e. family. So that's a little background about me.
Yeah, that was there's a lot there to unpack. I just want to just clarify one thing. Where you mentioned like homicides and bombs, my silence comes as no surprise because I've had this prior conversation with Michael. So rest assured, the I'm just as shocked by his stories, and probably you are the listeners. Did you say you've got a book about talking dogs or dogs can talk?
Yes, so I wrote it. It's called Princess Luna Wag the Tail. I rescued a pit bull 12 years ago, and she was the gentlest soul I've ever met. And I had massive problems with the police in Spain. Unfortunately, she had lymph cancer and had chemo for 10 months. And during that time, survival instinct and a desire to stay with me and my then wife, just inspiring. So when she passed away, I started writing a book about her and Rolex, a dog that we took from a guy in a pub because he was just in a box. And then Smiley, who was a doggo Argentina, which we adopted when Luna passed away. And now I've got Lily, which is another doggo Argentina. And unfortunately, they've chopped her ears off, as they do. And I think she was used as a bait dog. And she is just so gentle and beautiful that she makes my life a pleasure. So I wrote a book about that. And they come from another planet called Wag. And whilst they're down on the planet saving my kids from inevitable doom, the Labradors and Poodles have a coop on the other planet and blow up the transporter. So I won't give any more away. You have to buy it. And all the money from that book is going to a rescue centre I'm going to build in Sweden called Princess Luna.
Did you say you've released a book, or you're just
No,
about to?
it's coming. It's coming now in November, the first one.
Oh, what's the book going to be called? Have you not told it yet?
Princess Luna, Wag the Tail.
Right.
And then
Okay.
just after that, Old Broken Dynalo, the COVID Legacy, which is obviously about what's happened to me in my body and my life after trusting government and science, and unfortunately getting vaccinated so I could travel the world and provide for my family. And as a direct result, I got multiple sclerosis from it.
Yeah, I mean, well, we might as well talk
But that's
about
for another conversation. I want to really talk about what's happening in Sweden, mate.
it. Okay. The
We can follow it up with what all the things. I don't want to go down rabbit holes and different conspiracies. I don't want people to think I'm a freak. What I want to do is really get the message out of what is actually happening in Sweden and what's been happening for 3 decades.
Yes, we're definitely going to get to that. I'm pretty confident, even if
Yeah.
um, me trying to curtail you from doing it, you're definitely. So, one thing I will say, since our conversation and watching, you're actually on TikTok, which I will mention.
Yeah.
What is your TikTok account? What is it called?
Englishman.in.Sweden.
Yeah, and you do TikTok videos daily, do you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I didn't used to. I had a big following before, and I got banned for whatever reason. TikTok find is irritating on that particular day. Normally, it's the truth, and I built that one. So I started this one, I think, in December, late December. After I just thought, no, I've got to get this information out, and I did a post on the 29th of January regarding the violence and the bombs and the shooting in Sweden. And 2 days later, there was a mass murder in Örebro, and that one blew up and went over 1 million views. So they've since taken it down for some unknown reason. But
Yeah.
this is what TikTok do. It's great for what it is. You get your message out, but you have to be extremely careful how you get your message out. And then they send people to bait you and say, I respond because I'm a fiery type of character, and that's enough for them to give you a strike. And I appealed against it, and now I've got my thing back. And I think it's only about 16,000 followers at the moment, but it's not bad in 3 months.
It's fair to say you're a very colourful guy. Just for the sake of the audience, how old are you, Michael?
I'm 63 now.
63. So you're a
Yeah.
man that not only has travelled the world, but no, you're a biker as well.
Yeah,
And you've got lots of experiences.
I certainly
And
have.
you've got 2 children that were born in Sweden, were they?
Two daughters born in Spain and 3 daughters born in Sweden.
Right. Okay. And based on what you told me before, is that you're very, very concerned about their welfare, and you're trying to plan to move to a different country or jurisdiction. Is that
Well,
right?
to move is quite difficult. A couple of my daughters are grown up, and they've got lives, uh, and they don't want to change it. My youngest one from my last wife, she's only 8, and that's at an age where she's building friendships for life. And although we're divorced, me and my ex-wife are on good terms, and we're both in agreement that the best thing for her is a future somewhere else. But it takes a lot of money. It's not an easy thing to do, and we're divorced now for over a year. So obviously we're not going to live together. So it's doing all the logistics so it functions. But she's at an age where she likes to bicycle to school herself, and luckily the house that we had is only about 100 meters away from the school, so she can still bicycle to school on the across the grass path tracks. And it's a very, very safe little community where we've been living. But my older daughters, they're at an age where they're going out, and they're beautiful Swedish blonde girls, even though they're black, so I call them Sweden's Kardashians. They're extremely gorgeous girls, but they're very streetwise. And having a father like me, they've actually listened to myself and the things what I say, and they see it first. And they saw the violence in the schools getting worse and worse over the years. They've seen the violence in the towns. So when they go out, if I'm not around, normally they call one of my friends or pick them up and drive them, because even in taxis it's not safe. There's a lot of rapes that happen in the taxis because it's illegal taxis, or it's, not to sound horrible and Islamophobic or anti-immigration, but a lot of the drivers from overseas or don't have the same moral values as we do. And if you look at the statistics in Sweden, the amount of rapes that happen in taxis is absolutely off the charts. So it doesn't look like. I mean, the problem is, Bradley, that where in Europe or the world is safe now? I mean, the cracking down on immigration for legal immigration. You can't get to Thailand like you used to be able to do. One of the options I've got is America because I'm a minister. So I'll be able to get a green card very easily for America. And I've been offered a church in Utah, of all places. But, you know, that's defeating the point because how am I going to look after my kids if they're not with me in America when they're in Sweden? So, I mean, for the foreseeable future, at least until my daughter finishes high school, it's going to be totally based in Sweden.
Michael, we're going to talk about this sort of stuff. Can I just ask a question just to go back to understand who you are? How did you end up in Sweden in the first place?
Love. I was in Magaluf. I went to Magaluf with my brother and I fell head over heels in love with a Swedish bird. And I thought I was a DJ at the time and a hairdresser. I used to be a hairdresser, worked at Vidal Sassoons. And I went over to have a look at Sweden and I fell in love with Sweden the day I set foot there. I'd never seen anywhere as clean and I'd never seen as many beautiful women in my life. Even the guys were gorgeous, you know, great skin, great teeth, great hair. It was expensive, but I jumped straight into a job at a hairdressing salon and I was DJing in one of the nightclubs. So I moved there purely for love.
Right. And I understand Sweden is expensive as well. How much does it cost for a pint of beer over there?
It depends. If you're lucky, you can find a pint for a tenner in a crappy pub.
Right, yeah. And
if you go into a nice one and have a whiskey chaser, it'll cost you about 25 quid.
Jeez.
I know.
And what about income? How does it correlate?
Well, it's all relative because I mean, back in 1989, I were earning £3.5 grand a month hairdressing, and that's back in 1989. When it comes to performing, I mean, I long time gave up. I had salons and employed people and whatever, but I long gave up on the hairdressing side and just concentrated on the music. And if you're doing a decent corporate show in Sweden, you'll get £2 grand for 4 or 5 songs. A regular fee for a tribute is 1,000 or 10,000 Swedish krona for 2 45 minutes. So if you're doing 2 a week, you know, work it out, you're on £8 grand a month. You know, you pay high tax and it's expensive to live, but you've still got a very nice lifestyle at the end of it.
And what's the tax rate over there?
Flat. If you're self-employed, the flat rate's around 40%, and then you've got the VAT or MOMS as they call it. So, and when you've got a company, for every 100 krona, also for every £10 you earn, you'll pay around £6 in tax.
Wow, 60.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, well, I mean that's a rough ballpark because there's obviously you can draw off all the expenses and etc. But if you've got a salary of 10 grand a month, you'll clear 4 maybe 5,000 a month in your pocket.
Right. Okay, that's good then.
Yeah, well, I mean the mortgages aren't cheap, same as anywhere. And if you're renting a place, an half decent place like what I've got in the woods, middle of nowhere, nobody to disturb. So I can blast my music out and my dog can do what she wants. You're talking around £1,000 a month. And then your electricity, which has gone up 1,000% in price. So I think they're on two crowns at 26p kilowatts. So your regular electric bill's about 250 a month. So everything is expensive, but it's relevant. You earn enough to be able to maintain a good lifestyle.
So the income is increased, but also your costs have increased substantially.
Yeah. I mean, everywhere you go, you know, when I was in Spain, the prices increased. I've just been in Cyprus and I mean, I went out for lamb chops and it was 27 quid for lamb chops. And when in Cyprus, the singers don't earn more than like 200 quid a night. So I don't think anywhere today is affordable if you're a regular person. So you might as well have comfort of home and be poor, but close to the people you love. That's just the point I've come to in life.
I've got one question.
A little. Yeah.
I've got one question before we go to a break. The population in Sweden, is it roughly just over 10 million?
Officially 10.5, unofficially be creeping up towards 12 million.
12 million. Okay, that's going to be important when we go down Whilst you say you're not going to go down the rabbit hole, I pretty much guarantee you are, because
Uh,
having experienced a phone call with you, we're talking about many different things. Now, Michael, I asked you beforehand um, any songs that have any relevance to you in your life and meaning to you. Would you like to share your first song?
the Handbags and the Glad Rags. It's one of the greatest songs that Rod ever did. And I was privileged enough 7 or 8 years ago now, when I was in Las Vegas, to marry a couple from Scotland and Mexico, to go and see Sir Rod Stewart at the Coliseum, Las Vegas, and he pulled me on stage and I sang it with him. So
Wow.
that's always gonna have a special meaning to me. Every time I hear it, I stop in the car, because it's I'm an impersonator to Sir Rod, and to be recognised and pulled out of the crowd and to sing actually with him is something I'll never ever reach those heights again, no matter where I perform. And since that, I've been on festivals with 20, 30,000 people, which is always a euphoric feeling, but nothing will ever compare to actually singing with the man you idolise in front of a full house in Las Vegas.
So here we go, guys. Have a listen and enjoy.
Ever seen a blind man cross the road, trying to make the other side? Ever seen a young girl growing old, trying to make herself a bride? So what becomes of you, my love, when they have finally stripped you of the handbags and the glad rags that your granddad had to sweat so you could buy? Once I was a young man, and all I thought I had to do was smile. You are still a young girl, and you bought everything in style. Listen, but once you think you're in your act, 'cause you don't mean a single thing without the handbags and the glad rags that your granddad had to sweat so you could buy. Sing a song of sixpence for your sake, and take a bottle full of rye. 4 and 20 blackbirds in a cake, and bake them all in a pie. They told me you missed school today, so what I suggest you just throw them all away. The handbags and the glad rags that your poor old granddad had to sweat to buy. They told me you missed school today, so I suggest you just throw them all away. The handbags and the glad rags that your poor old granddad had to sweat to buy.
Well, that was handbags and glad rags. Thank you
The
very much.
the glad rags, Bradders.
The glad rags. Thank you. The now I you rushed past this very quickly in the first part.
Yeah.
You used to be, or probably you are actually, I guess, a minister. Funny enough,
Yes.
the station manager for Dreamcatcher Radio, Steve Little, is also used to be, well, he used to be a minister as well.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
so, and I think it was quite an extended period, but no doubt he'll talk about that another time. Explain that to me because it's not a normal sort of path, is it? So, how did you end up in
No, well,
doing that?
well, I am very religious as it goes, and my dad was Catholic, my mum Protestant, and I'm born, say, in the '60s, so I went through all of this segregation and the violence, and kicked out of one school for fighting because I got a paddy, Irish dad or Irish Catholic dad, and moved to a Protestant school and kicked out there, and on it went and on it went. And I was in Harrods when it was blown up. I was actually washing someone's hair in Harrods when it blew up. I was in the Corn Exchange in Doncaster, actually, in it when that bomb went off. And for me, religion shouldn't cause violence. Unfortunately, it does. I think my own personal belief on religion is it's all about love and sharing love. And what better way to do that than to marry people? So I became an ordained minister many years ago. And then that also took me around the world. And, when you get your wedding certificate, it says Rod Stewart. So people don't read that. It's Rod. They see Rod. So who married you? Yeah, no, who married you? Rod Stewart. And I look like him. So there you go. I've married people in all over the world, actually. So it's sharing love, and there's nothing like seeing people smile, because we all know what happens in marriage a few years down the line, over, in it. That's an unfortunate way life is today. There's no commitment. Like my parents, they fought tooth and nail through thick and thin and hard times, and they managed to stay together like a lot of people in that generation did until death do part. And I think that's a sad thing which is missing from society. And one of the reasons we're having so much trouble, because in many houses, there's not that father figure. And I think sharing love and sharing happiness is one of the things that I was put on this planet to do. So I really enjoy seeing the joy in people when they get married, and the absolute delight. Everybody who's there, and people forget all the troubles for that one brief moment. Everybody's living in a beautiful world. So that's why I continue to marry people around the world.
Yeah, it's a bit like utopia as well, isn't it? But
Yeah,
divorce
it really is.
in the UK is very, very high. The
Yeah.
one thing that's quite interesting, I know we're going to definitely talk about your stuff in a minute, but the fact
That's all right.
these subjects, which I've got knowledge on, the is during COVID, the divorce rate went to something like 70 odd percent, right?
Yeah,
Because people did not know how to live with one another,
that's right.
never experienced it.
No,
So divorce applications in the UK court system was skyrocketing, and now in the UK you've got no fault divorce, and which basically means you can just divorce for whatever reason you like now, so you don't even have to explain or whatever. And I think that actually is quite helpful, if I'm perfectly honest, because what's the point of going through trauma again and again if you
yeah.
really
I mean,
you've had enough of one another?
yeah. Well, I mean, I think you're totally right with all of the points you made there. I mean, me and my now ex-wife, we knew each other for 20 years. We dated back in the late '80s, early '90s, and she's 12 years younger than me. And when COVID came, and we married 14 years ago, but when COVID came, and all of a sudden we were together 24/7, it drove me nuts, because I mean, I'm used to being on the road. I'm used to going away, coming back, being at home maybe 3 days, away for 2 or 3 days, either performing in Sweden or Norway or Denmark or the UK. And so when we were in Spain, living in Spain as a family unit was perfect. And then COVID came, and all of a sudden we're like, well, I don't really like that about you, and I don't like that about you. And yeah, I mean, really, I mean, we're still mates, but it's just one of those sad, inevitable things that we separated out. It took me by shock. I had no idea it was coming whatsoever. So, and in Sweden, it takes 3 weeks to get divorced.
Does it?
Yeah, and 80% of all divorces are initiated by the woman in Sweden, and the average age is 50. When the woman just thinks, oh my God, my youth's disappearing. And with this guy who's getting a bit fat or getting a bit bald, and I want my life. And they normally start off with somebody else. And yeah, touche, that's how it goes, isn't it?
So here's a cheeky question I've got for you.
Yeah.
You said at the start of the interview that Swedish women look stunning. Do they still look stunning at 50 or 60?
Oh, at 50, it's, oh, well, they're just incredible. I don't know what it is. They keep themselves in fantastic shape, the majority of them. They're just all the beautiful creatures. God was very nice to Swedish as a nation. The Swedish genetics are incredible. Bone structure, teeth, skin, hair. I mean, most of them, I say I'm 63, most of my friends are in the same age, and the women are still absolutely drop dead gorgeous. I don't know what it is about. Something in the water, all the Scandinavia, the Icelandic, the Finnish. If you watch that diabolical show yesterday, and you look across the different nations, if you see the Swedish commentators and the Swedish acts, even though this act was Finnish and it's a joke, but the Swedish, for some reason, the genetics are so good up until about 3 decades ago when they started getting diluted by immigration.
Right. The okay, I've got another question.
Yeah.
Are you single now? Or
I am, mate.
Single, or?
I'm happily single. I've got my beautiful girl, Lily, my dog. I've got great contact with all of my kids. I've got my Harley Davidson, and I've got a nice apartment in the middle of nowhere, so I can pretty much do what I want when I want. And for the first time in 35 years, the income I've got is all mine, which is wonderful. And I've got no intention of tying myself down to another long-term relationship at all. I'm actually enjoying the life as it is now.
Fantastic, fantastic. Now, okay, I do not know where to start, if I'm honest. Well, you've explained a little bit about yourself. I'm a little bit reluctant to say, let's talk about this first or that first, because the story that you're putting out through your TikToks and also from what you've actually showed to me. So it's not as if it's hearsay or propaganda in any way, shape, or form. It's actually what's happening. So you moved to Sweden, and Sweden was amazing. Which you look at the images when you go back to Google Earth and all the sort of history about Sweden. It seemed like a very, very peaceful country. A bit. I wouldn't say it's akin with Monaco, but what I mean is that there was no drama.
It was literally paradise. I mean, I've never at that time. I come from a council estate in Doncaster, so an exciting trip for me. We're down to Cleethorpes or Scarborough to beat up some mods on my bike, and that were about as far away as I went. And I went to Cornwall with my first love. In a tent into Sennen Cove. We ended up at Skewjacks with Jimmy Percy from Sham 69 at his surfing centre, and that was as far as I've travelled in my life. And I went to Magaluf and met this Swedish bird, and so I moved over there, and it was an eye-opener. I mean, I spent 3 or 4 years in London before I moved to Sweden, and even back then, in the 80s, even though it was an incredible music scene, I mean, it was the best music scene ever, but it was starting to get dirty. It was starting to get a bit rough, and I moved to Sweden, and just white beaches, blue sea, incredible women, safe, friendly people. Okay, expensive. You actually got 4 seasons. You had the summer, you had the autumn, you had the spring. The winter. The winters were harsh, but it didn't matter because there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothes, to pun a phrase. And when I moved there, I just took a deep breath, and I was like, wow. Just wow! Now I've found home, and I've stayed there ever since.
My brother, he was on holiday once, and he was only young. He had a successful job in the city, and he met a woman from Vietnam, and he decided that
me love you a long time. as long as your money lasts.
Well, I'll tell you this story briefly. And so they started like hitting it off, going on really well. And he went to Vietnam and met her, met the family. And my brother is a bit like offish sort of character.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a lot of time for him to accept anybody, male or female, in his life. Um, anyway, so he decided one day. Obviously, there's a discussions going in the background between him and her, and he said he had enough of the UK and I want to move to Vietnam. Quite literally, he sold everything, quit his job, and went to Vietnam with 50 grand in his bank account. He's now married with this woman. I'm hoping for children. The
Okay.
And he runs 7 businesses over there,
Oh, wow.
5 restaurants and 2 hostels.
Wow, fair play to him.
He is well settled and he loves it. He likes coming back to the UK just to visit, but
Yeah.
he likes going back to Vietnam where he feels safe.
That's good for him. That's nice to hear a success story.
Yeah, very much.
Especially not being not stereotyping, but a lot of people I know married Vietnamese, a Filipino, Thai normally ends up in disasters. So it's really good to hear that somebody's made a crack of it and made a big success of not just a marriage but of his life. Congratulations to your brother.
Yeah. She actually, what I will say, add in there because I could get what you're saying, is she actually owned a hostel herself and a small restaurant. But what
Wow.
he's done is just expanded it, and there's lots of military over there as well.
Yeah.
And so they get a lot of military customers and
Good for them.
obviously as well. But he's doing really well. He's only young. He's not even 30 yet. But
Oh, good for him. Well, I mean, really, I really like to hear when, the power of love works, and both personally and business-wise has made a big success of it. It deserves a round of applause, and it shows other people that it's worth a crack. I mean, love. I can't say, even though I've been married and divorced 3 times, I can't say enough to anybody. Give it a go. There's no such feeling as when you're actually in love. The delight you waking up next to somebody you love, the sensation you have looking at them. Sadly for me, I've still got that feeling for my ex-wife. So probably one of the reasons why I'm not bothered about moving on, because I can't. But that's just how it is. Some of us are made in different ways, eh? So
yeah, well, fingers crossed. Doors are sometimes always open. So if it wasn't for her, he wouldn't be in Vietnam. But
no, fair play to him.
In all honesty, I admire him to have the nash,
the courage to do it. It takes some nuts, doesn't it?
Because he had a successful job and he was on a proper career path.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
It chose love and it's worked out well for him. I'm really fair play to him. And you hear so many sad stories. I think it's great to hear a positive one like that. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, especially on TV, those programs. What do they call it?
Don't.
40 Days.
You can't watch that. And Jeremy Kyle and vulgar people like that who are just, married at first sight. And all these stupid these reality shows, which is, I've done reality TV and I know it's all fake, and it just gives people the wrong ideas. It gives the younger generation the wrong impression of what love should be and how it is. So I think stories like your brother, they should be headline news to show people, give it a go, take a chance. It's not always going to look like it does on TV. Sometimes you actually find the cake and you can eat it. So
yeah, it's a true story. And the thing is, what people don't realize, life cannot be edited.
No,
like TV can. And
no.
And whilst he's doing very, very well, trust me, he's struggled. He struggled because he didn't know the language. He had to trust people that he couldn't communicate effectively. But like I say, and he had a friend who come and joined him who had a motorcycle accident and almost died. So there's so many different things that go through. Anyway, we've got about 4 minutes left in this sort of segment. Let's try and get you warmed up. Trust me, guys. Michael, I can't. All I can say is this interview is going to be guided by you now. Tell us what you want to tell us, because what Michael, the knowledge he's got, and he's living there, folks. He's living there. About
in the epicenter, mate. I'm in the epicenter of the storm.
Yes. So
Helsingborg, Sweden.
tell us about Sweden now in 2025.
Well, to tell you about Sweden in 2025, I've got to tell you about Sweden in the late 80s and early 90s when
Go
the
ahead.
violence first started to erupt. Sweden took in a lot of Baltic nation refugees from the Serbian, Albanian wars, Bosnia and Serbia, and the Croatia and all this area when they had their massive war, and they brought them in and put them all in the same areas. So the wars just continued. The bike culture crept in. I mean, so, and then I mentioned at the beginning a couple of my friends who were in my band aren't with us anymore. I move in a lot of circles. I've got a lot of friends. I never judge anybody by the nationality, by the religion, by the colour, by the sexual preferences. I judge people on the person when I meet them. And a lot of my friends happen to be bikers, probably because of my love for motorbikes. So you drop into that circle. And from a rough guess, from the 20 bikers I knew back then, there's about 6 of them left alive. One say were blown up by a grenade. One had his head cut off and his body washed up on the beach. One of my other friends was assassinated. He was on his motorbike on the E4, one of the main roads in Sweden. He was picked up by a sniper from a bridge. And that's when the violence really started, first showed its head with the motorbike gangs. I won't say the names because I've still got friends who are in both gangs, and I obviously don't want to paint a target on my back with people I still know and respect, and they respect me. But that's when the violence first started, and that was obviously drug related. That's what the only violence that was back then was who's going to control what area for which type of narcotic, and they sort of settled after bazookas being shot into people's houses. I mean, there were multiple murders. It was you could be walking down the high street in Helsingborg and there'd be a drive-by shooting, and this is back in the late 80s, early 90s, and that were unheard of, and they seemed to come together and agree, okay, we'll take this area, we'll take this town, this city, and they divided it up. And as a rule then, that stopped the small criminals, because for them to do anything, they had to get permission from whichever gang was controlling that area. And that worked out well until Stefan Löfven and the previous prime minister decided to open the floodgates, pretty much copied Tony Blair's policies, and they just let in anybody. And then, of course, Angela Merkel, she just opened the gates, and 6 million undesirables entered Germany, and a lot of them ended up in Sweden. We've talked about the population before, officially 10.5, and it's more like 12 million. And I think it's 14 or 15% now of Sweden is Islamic, which is a massive percentage. They'll argue with it and say it's only 6%. If you walk around any town or city today, especially at night time, you'll be lucky to see Swedes. And of course, hand in hand with massive immigration comes the problems that they bring with them from their war-torn zones. And they just don't know how to leave that behind, because a lot of people, 17, 18, 19, 20, all they've known all their life is violence and war. So I suppose it's difficult for them to move on. And the ones who came a little bit older, their kids are born into the areas where they live, and they don't integrate. So if you're from Afghanistan, you knock about with Afghanis. If you're Syrian, you knock about with Syrians, Eritreans, Somalians, and the list goes on. And then they will form their own gangs. And they're particularly bloodthirsty, and their desirable way of showing their power, unfortunately, is bombs. I mean, there's an epidemic of bombs in Sweden. Just in January, 32 bombs. And the media, how they try and get around this is by saying, one, the most ridiculous explanation I've ever had. It was in January, it was -8 degrees, and there were a big explosion, and they said it was people out having a barbecue at 2 o'clock in the morning. And the people bought it.
Yeah, Michael, yeah. I'm going to have to pause you there. Can you just tell me what your next song of choice is, please?
I certainly can. It'll be a song which is called The Rhythm of My Heart, which is a cover that Rod did. It was written for him. And it's for no particular reason apart from that. Every time I hear that song, I think about when I was on Bethel's Beach in New Zealand, which is my spiritual home and where my ashes are going to be spread. And when you see the video of Rhythm of My Heart and you see Bethel's, you can see the connection between it. It's where the ocean meets the sky. I'll be sailing. And you'll never find anywhere more beautiful on this planet, and I've been around this planet, than Bethel's Beach, West Coast, Auckland. It is breathtaking. Do you remember Xena Warrior? The series Xena.
Across the street, the river runs down in the gutter. Life is slipping away. Let me still exist in another place, running under cover of a helicopter blade. Flames are getting higher in efforts, burning down the bridges of my memory. Love may still be alive somewhere, somewhere, where they're down and only dear 100 steel towns away. Oh, the rhythm of my heart is beating like a drum, with the words I love you rolling off my tongue. No, never will I roam, for I know my place is home, where the ocean meets the sky. I'll be sailing. Photographs, kerosene, light up my darkness, light it up, light it up, light it up. I can still feel a touch of your thin blue jeans, running down the alley. I got my eyes all over you, baby, oh baby. Oh, the rhythm of my heart is beating like a drum, with the words I love you rolling off my tongue. No, never will I roam, for I know my place is home, where the ocean meets the sky. I'll be sailing. I'll be sailing. I've got lightning in my veins, slipping like the handle of a slot machine. Love may still exist in another place. I'm just yanking back the handle, no expression on my face. My rhythm of my heart is beating like a drum, with the words I love you rolling off my tongue. Oh, never will I roam, for I know my place is home, where the ocean meets the sky. I'll be sailing. The rhythm of my heart is beating like a drum, with the words I love you rolling off my tongue. No, never will I roam, for I know my place is home, where the ocean meets the sky. I'll be sailing. The rhythm of my heart is beating like a drum, the words I love you rolling off my tongue. Never will I roam, for I know my place is home, where the ocean meets the sky. I'll be sailing.
Michael, sorry, unfortunately, the music interrupted our conversation. You were saying about Xena Warrior.
Xena Warrior. It was a big series in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I think it ran that long, with an incredibly beautiful Kiwi. She still lives in the area, by the way. But Bethel's is a Maori sacred land. Certain areas that you can't go in. The Maori culture is incredibly fascinating, and it's where I used to walk my agent in New Zealand's dogs over the years. And when you walk, you can feel the ghosts and the ancestry of the area. So I'm actually going to have my ashes spread when I die. I've already put away a fund for that for my daughters to go down there to New Zealand and spread my ashes. in the Tassie Ocean, and I'll be swimming with the dolphins in there ever after.
Did you say spread my ash? Oh, that my ashes when you don't
My
pass.
ashes.
Oh, yeah, I thought you meant you did it already.
Oh, I'm not a ghost, mate.
Sorry, I apologize. So, and
So,
we got to the
but
point.
that's the connection with that song.
Yeah, I get you. I get you. So we got to the point of Sweden had a bit of a problem with gangs for such a small population and small country as well.
Not a bit. Not a bit. Yeah, back then it were about 9 million. So yeah, and biker gangs in every city, every town.
When I looked online, going back to 1980, Sweden's population apparently was 8.3 million.
Well, I'm about 700,000 out. So yeah, it went a big country. It's a long country. It's the second longest country in Europe. But the towns and cities are spaced out. Of course, there's a lot of coastal areas, ports. So wherever you've got a port, it doesn't matter what country you're in, where there's a port, it's a gateway for drugs and guns and you name it. And that's where normally you get your first settlement of gangs, especially in Sweden. That's how it was. Helsingborg, the big port, and the biker gangs were fighting over that. And then Gothenburg, Stockholm, of course. And there's a few other ports along the way, and then they need a supply chain where they can push everything. So they built like you could make a route. You could have a route around through Sweden of the relevant biker gangs, and why they chose it. You can actually, trace from Stockholm down to Helsingborg, and pretty much guaranteed it splits halfway down, and one gang went that side, and the other gang went that side, and then they meet again at the bottom. Hey there, mate.
Yeah. So I suppose gangs have always existed. I mean, even going back to America, prohibition sort of time, and gambling and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, cool.
There's lots going on. But what my understanding is, what you're saying now, this is something like new age sort of stuff.
Oh, the gangs that are settled now in Sweden, man, they're on a different level. They've just got no moral compass. They've got no empathy. So going back to that point about when a child's born into poverty and destruction, it's very difficult for them to break out of it. And they've brought all the troubles with them and settled in Sweden, and they've continued the wars. I mean, it's not all gang related. I agree to a degree with the government when they're saying that most of the crime is gang related, which it is. But the fact that they're saying it's safe for the general public, it's not. I mean, 2.5, 3 weeks ago, a 35-year-old lady and a 5-year-old daughter are still in intensive care in hospital in Gothenburg because the moron of a child, because now they're recruiting 13, 14-year-olds to do the dirty work, they bombed the wrong address. So these innocent people on this very nice little estate somewhere on the outskirts of Gothenburg, they're still fighting for their lives because the idiotic gang members got the wrong address and blew up the wrong house. So I wouldn't say it's safe for the general public, would you?
No, of course not. And that's not an isolated instance, because you're reporting almost daily, aren't you, on your TikTok?
Well, 32 bombs and 17 shootings in January. I've not got the statistics for rape, but it's off the charts. I mean, in Sweden, 1 in 4 girls were raped before the age of 20, which is a horrific statistic. In early March, there were 14 days with a bomb every day. One day there were 2 bombs and 6 people shot dead. A lot of the bombings are grenades. They've run out of grenades from the Baltic War, which was the preferred weapon at that time, because you don't really need to be Einstein to pull a pin down and throw it. But now they're getting a bit more sophisticated, and in my personal opinion, a lot of the hardware which is meant for Ukraine is filtering its way back to the gangs all across Europe. They've got no idea how much weaponry has disappeared. The corruption in both ends of Sweden and in Ukraine and everywhere in between. I mean, where else are they getting the ingredients to make bomb making? And the varying sizes of bombs, some bombs are small and maybe just blow up the entrance to an apartment block. Because this is the thing as well, right? They can say it boils my blood, and I think people need to know this. If they're going after one particular target, They don't know which apartment that person's in. They just know the block. They're attacking the block to send a message, you know. And windows are being blown out on the whole streets because they don't know which house it is or which area it is. So they're just indiscriminately bombing.
Like you say, and also, where do they get the funding for this? Can I just share with you, because you asked the question, you know the statistics. I've just gone to statista.com, and the highest point recorded, this goes to 2023, they've not updated since then. The sexual assaults in 2023 was 23,550. This study was in 2013 it started, and there's 15,999, 995. In 2014, 18,460. 2015, there was a decrease to 16,272. 16, 18,574. 17, this just goes increase, basically. And 2021, 26,688. One statistic which stuck out to me in this chart is sexual molestation of children, which is shown in black. Each year, it's pretty much consistent until 2019 to 2022, where it was at its peak. That's recorded. And it's literally in excess of 9,000 every single year.
It's obscene. It's just obscene.
Yeah.
I mean, the problem is there's a political party called the Centre Party, and one of their leaders is being charged for pedophilia, and he resigned. He didn't even get fired. You know, he's a kiddie fiddler, and this is a high-ranking leader of one of the political parties in Sweden. You've got the same problem in the United Kingdom, I know, with the queer Keir and all of his gang. You know, I don't think they're never going to resolve the problem with child molestation when your government's riddled with it, you know. And I say I can't really talk that much about UK anymore because I go back and gig and I visit my mum and the friends I've got who are there. But I mean, I'm pretty much solidified in Sweden and chasing truth and sharing truth of what's happening in Sweden. And when you've got daughters who are at an age where they're going out, it's extremely worrying. It's extremely worrying. You know, they're not allowed to have telephones in the school. And I made a petition about that and got it so that my daughter can have a GPS watch because kids are disappearing, you know. And a friend of mine is good on tech, and I've got a little tracker which is sewn into some of my daughter's clothes. So if I need to check, I can see where she is. Is that a way that you should have to live your life in a so-called civilized country, which 30 years ago was the beaming, shining light of how a society should be run? Everybody wanted a society like Sweden, and now everybody doesn't want a society that's like Sweden. Children, they're our future. They're what we're all here for. If you're lucky enough to reproduce and have children, it's your obligation to take care of them and make sure they're never in danger. And when you're in a country like Sweden, which on the outside looks friendly, looks gentle, the suppress the news, it really grinds me that they suppress the news and people like myself have to put their head on the chopping block to expose what's going on, purely because I'm scared shitless for my children of all their ages, because not one generation is now safe in Sweden. Not one single generation.
Yeah. Can I just ask you a quick question? You basically said Sweden 30 years ago was safe, even with those gangs.
Yeah, because they never went after the public. They normally resolve the issues. I mean, like they blow up each other's bikie gang houses.
Right, I see.
And when I say, like, when one of my best friends was assassinated on the motorway, it could have caused an accident, but they're not shooting at each other like they are now. Like the young girl who was 11 years old, who was caught in the crossfire and was murdered outside McDonald's.
Right.
She was walking a dog. She was 11 years old, for Christ's sake, walking a dog. And she's not with us anymore because these idiots They just got no. They've got no brain capacity. The IQ of these morons is lower than my dog's, and I'm not being insultive now. A dog is an equivalent IQ of 68. Some of the places where these people come from, they're registered as being barely functional. They give them a bomb, they give them a gun, they give them a target, and off they go. And they don't care what the collateral damage is. And unfortunately, you can hear I get animated about this. Unfortunately, the government don't know what to do. Ulf Kristersson is the Prime Minister of Sweden. Him and the I don't know what it's called in English, I'm losing my English now, the Internal Minister of Sweden, they stood at a press conference and said they have lost control of the streets of Sweden. What confidence is that supposed to give you? And for the life of me, my Swedish friends, they're proper fellas, they're proper geezers, and they all feel the same as me. And they're even getting to a point where they're saying, look, let's get together, let's go out, take us dogs, let's patrol the streets and make sure other people's children are safe, you know, and we'd probably get arrested for that. Why has it got to a point where the government, they've not just conceded defeat, they've capitulated on it?
Yeah, so basically citizen justice, definitely you get arrested for that in the UK.
Yeah, it's coming though, isn't it, you know?
Yeah, so basically what you're saying is like I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what I'm listening to is like, for example, the mob, they wouldn't touch women and children, right?
Well, that's how the biker gangs are.
But basically what you're saying is everybody's fair game.
Well, I mean, when 11-year-olds are shot walking from a McDonald's, when a 35-year-old, 5-year-old are blown up in their house, when other people are innocently caught up shrapnel or, traumatized. I know people who came here from Iraq, and they've said that they feel more intimidated in Sweden than they do in Iraq. Now, if you remember that horrendous mass shooting in Orebro, a place called a little place called Orebro, and it's a place called Komvux. It's where you go to learn Swedish and higher education. When I first moved to Sweden, it was mandatory. I had to go there, and I had 3 years to learn the language, to read, write, and speak it. Otherwise, I won't be allowed to stay. And people were saying, "Oh, this was a Swede. This was a racial provocated attack." Actually, it wasn't. He blamed the school for his failings and that he couldn't get a job. And he lashed out that way, not defending him in any way because this is a sick individual. But I went to a comparative school in Sweden, and the people I went to were Iraqi, they were Yugoslavian, they were Greek, they were African, they were Ghanaian. And we all went there for the same reason, to better ourselves so we could get work in Sweden. So when they attacked this school, it was attacking a group of people who were trying to better their lives. And they had a thing on TV just yesterday, on Friday in Sweden, 30 days after our follow-up. And all they made it about was, they made a mistake on TV4 because they highlighted now that immigrants are wanting to leave Sweden because it's more dangerous than where they came from. I mean, that's just explains it all in one little bubble, you know?
And they're obviously not in fear of Swedes because, one would assume they're peaceful people. They're fear of the same population that's come to the country.
The Swedes are passive, and they've been too passive, and I fear that that's going to be the downfall of Sweden. Many people are waking up, much like with Britain. What they forget about Brits later, the Brits are going to stand up and say, we've had enough, like in Ireland. They're starting to rebel now. In Sweden, I don't really know if there's enough people with the fight in them. It's years and decades of indoctrination into the woke society, the woke way of living. And my heart bleeds for Sweden because, believe me, I love that country. I love the place. I could be living the life around in New Zealand or America now, but I love Sweden, and the love for my children is something which you can never, ever walk away from. I can go away for periods of times on tours, but I can never leave my children.
I have a very quick question, and I'd like to introduce your third song. This is just a question, yes or no. Do you consider yourself an activist now?
A quick question before the musical interlude.
Yes.
Right. And we'll carry on with that in a sec. Would you like to introduce your next song?
Well, my next song is a song called The Killing of Georgie. It's actually Rod's second on. You might Google this and find out. I know it was #1 for 8 weeks in the UK. It's about his black gay friend who was murdered, stabbed to death in New York City. And this song happens to be the godfather of my eldest daughter, a guy called Thomas. I love dearly. He's gay. He's as camp as they come. And this was his favorite song because back then he said, wow, when he first heard it, Rod Stewart sang a song about gays. And this is when people didn't talk about being gay. There were no such thing as LBGT plus 96 XYZ, whatever it is. You know, you were a man or you were a woman, and there were no leeway or no tolerance for anything else. And I stood up so many times, I stood and fought on behalf of Thomas because of the victimization he got from morons. And also, I've got a lot of friends who are black. I don't know what word you're supposed to use in this modern society, colored, black, whatever you say, you're going to offend them. And George, the song of Rod Stewart wrote, the song about that was a black gay. And that's way back 70s, being black in form. I always think about my good friend Thomas.
Thank you.
Who's gay.
Let's play this song.
Is slipping away. Let me still exist in another place, running on the cover of a helicopter plane. Flames are getting higher in effigy, burning down the bridges of my memory. Love may still be alive somewhere, somewhere, where they're down and only dear 100 steel towns away. Oh, the rhythm of my heart is beating like a drum, with the words I love you rolling off my tongue. No, never will I roam, for I know my place is home, where the ocean meets the sky. I'll be sailing. Photographs, kerosene, light up my darkness, light it up, light it up, light it up. I can still feel a touch of your thin blue jeans, running down the alley. I got my eyes all over you, baby, oh baby. Oh, the rhythm of my heart is beating like a drum, with the words I love you rolling off my tongue. No, never will I roam, for I know my place is home, where the ocean meets the sky. I'll be sailing. I'll be sailing. Oh, I've got lightning in my veins, swimming like the handle of a slot machine. Love may still exist in another place. I'm just yanking back the handle, no expression on my face. The rhythm of my heart is beating like a drum, with the words I love you rolling off my tongue. Oh, never will I roam, for I know my place is home, where the ocean meets the sky. I'll be sailing. The rhythm of my heart is beating like a drum, with the words I love you rolling off my tongue. No, never will I roam, for I know my place is home, where the ocean meets the sky. I'll be sailing. The rhythm of my heart is beating like a drum, the words I love you rolling off my tongue. Never will I roam, meets the sky, I'll be sailing.
King of George. I've not heard that song before, so thank you very much for sharing that.
Brilliant song. Rod Stewart at his peak as a songwriter.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I asked you the question because it's a bit like asking someone who do you vote for, and I just thought I'll ask
I
you.
voted for SD. I voted for SD. That's the right-wing party in Sweden. And 10 years ago, if you said you voted for SD, you were a Nazi. And now, if you say you voted for SD, they're the second biggest party in Sweden, and it's the only party who's standing up for Sweden. They're very Trumpish, they're very pro-Swede, and the new laws that are coming in about anybody committing crime going to get deported even if they've got a Swedish passport, and they're going to have no benefits retroactive to 2022. And that's coming in 2027. Why there's a delay until 27, I don't know, but it's a step in the right direction, and that's because of SD. They've simply had enough. The one party has had enough of all this violence. And the drain of the economy. So yeah.
So this
you can ask me who I vote for.
This potentially, I'm just researching it just now because it's the first time you mentioned it to me. Is perhaps a bit like reform in the UK, is it?
Well, it's slightly different because Jimmy Åkesson, although he's been comparative time a politician, has been leader of the SD for 20 years, and he's faced multiple death threats. Is being abused. He was the most hated man in the country. And now people are starting to realise that is actually his passion is Sweden. And I met him several times. He's a great guy. He's actually a musician. And he chose politics instead of music. And when it comes to reform, I've met Nigel Farage. And I think Nigel Farage is a charlatan. I think is in it for himself. People can't see past the hatred for Labour and the Tories is the reason why people like Nigel Farage exist, to divert and to cultivate the hatred. I think Nigel Farage creates more hate and division than any other politician in British history has managed to do. Now, that said, I blame him totally for Brexit, which me being working abroad and living abroad, Brexit made life a little bit more difficult. But Nigel Farage was the architect of that, and it was all done on lies. Starmer has no right to bring Britain back into the EU without a public vote. Look at the state of the country. Nigel Farage, for me, is a charlatan and the biggest con man ever to become a politician.
Yeah, one thing, right? I'll be brutally honest, and I've explained it on this show before. I don't vote, right? And I shouldn't have an opinion. I get it on politics. But the reason why I don't vote is because I don't know who to vote for. And one thing, if I was to vote for Brexit at the time, I would have voted for Brexit because I believed in all the narratives people told, but I didn't vote. And it wasn't a protest vote. It's because I just couldn't be bothered. But in hindsight, which is a wonderful thing in life, I voted against leaving the European Union. I think that was a very bad decision on our part.
The worst in modern history. Worst in modern history. I mean, you can't send the people back. We've got no rights abroad. If you try and emigrate now, it's nearly impossible if you move into Europe. We're hated. I mean, literally hated. I spend a lot of time abroad, and the reason I'll not go back to Spain is because they hate us with a vengeance. And I mean, can they reverse it? Do they want us back? That's another topic for another day, because, like I said, I'm not living in Britain anymore. I just visit. Swedes have always been passive towards everybody, and they luckily still like British people. They love British culture. They love British music. They love British food. You can go into a restaurant here in Sweden and get brown sauce. That's how we've managed to sort of cultivate their food tastes. So yeah. Now, when we come to politics, I'll leave that well alone because that's when I start to really upset people.
I knew that going into this interview with you, Michael, that I didn't know what direction we'd go down. So we're talking about many topics. So I'm 44 years old, and you're in your 60s. Now, something that you just touched on. Do you remember and it's still bubbling away at the moment, where Spain said we don't want tourists anymore.
Oh
The
God, yeah.
Because we don't want your money, we don't want you. We don't appreciate you, and that's all. It was a massive campaign. I don't. Is it still ongoing or?
It's still going. Oh God, yeah, it's still going. I mean, I had a Swedish registered Volvo XC60, 8 months old. I drove it from Sweden, and it was vandalised the second day I was there. Tourists go on, scribbled across the bonnet in Spanish, of course. The protests at airports, the protesting on the streets. I mean, when a society is collapsing and Spain is collapsing, they're going bankrupt. They're not going to have a pension within a year. They're in dire straits, and everybody needs a scapegoat. And unfortunately, for British people, the scapegoat for the decline of Spain is us. You know, in Mallorca in particular, where I lived or worked, I did 21 seasons. I've seen that going downhill, and believe you me, without Brits, which is was in Mallorca, it was the largest tourist population that was in Germany, and now it's disappearing. And they're turning their attention onto the Germans. They're cleaning up Arenal like they did Magaluf, and for some reason they just the ones who are rich, they've made their money, and now they want their island back. You know, leave them to it. I'll never set foot there again, even though I loved it. Saying two of my kids are born there, so they could have had Spanish citizenship, but they'd have to give up the Swedish. And both me and my wife said, not a chance, not a chance. You know, whereas I can get Swedish and British. Well, I can, but they've blocked it at the moment because they're classing me as an activist against the state now for sharing the truth.
You did mention that on the phone call the other day.
Yeah.
We'll touch on that briefly because obviously that's an ongoing issue.
Yeah.
So we'll park it, I guess. But that's what's happening to you. But it something that people don't, I try and think what the world is going to look like not the world, but where I live in 10 years' time. And I look back through old photos, and you can see different dynamics, even the high street and stuff like that.
Oh God, yeah.
And knowing your neighbours and all that sort of thing. How obviously in the UK, thankfully, we don't see bombs like thrown
Not
about.
yet.
Okay, fair point. But thankfully we don't. But Sweden, such a small country, and it's quite an isolated country in some respects, and it doesn't want arguments with anybody. It doesn't go to war. But
It didn't. But they joined NATO without a referendum, and now they're in war. They're providing a lot of equipment and military hardware and money to the Ukraine. And let's not even go down Ukraine, which side is right and which side is wrong. But up until 18 months ago, when Sweden joined NATO, they'd been at peace for 200 years. And they've never been involved in any war. They're known for the humanitarian side of it, the passion for helping people starving, the passion for helping refugees. And unfortunately, that's been taken and abused. So when they joined NATO, they put a target on their back. And they put a target on every citizen of Sweden's backs. Where my old house is and nearby where I live, there's a military base which is now full of Americans. It's an air base. And they're talking even about putting nuclear weapons on Swedish soil. So, Russia, believe me, I've been in Russia many, many times. I've still got some very close Russian friends. They've never had a desire on Sweden, never. But now, because it's an integral part of NATO, because they're very advanced weaponry-wise in Sweden, it's a target. So I won't be surprised. Gotland, which is the nearest point on the ocean to where Russia is, they've got a full battalion down there. And even putting patriots and everything in there because they brought this on themselves with the insane idea of joining this military alliance called NATO, which is nothing apart from a war machine. NATO attacked Yugoslavia. People forget that. They bombed civilians. I was actually on the bridge in Sarajevo when an F-16 was coming in to bomb it, and they saw this collaboration of people and a big Union Jack on the I was performing with an American guy, a Yugoslavian, and two Swedes, the famous fiber called themselves. We were performing, we got a massive Union Jack flying, and the plane averted at the last second. And about 2 or 3 years ago, I was in a restaurant in Sweden with my ex-wife and my daughter in a buggy and my two dogs. And the guy came over to me, it was a waiter there, and he actually brought this up. He said, I know this is a long shot, I've heard rumours, but are you the guy who was still on the bridge in Sarajevo and sang? I went, yeah. He said, every time you come to this restaurant, is free. I was 4 years old, and you are one of my heroes. I started crying. I started crying because I'd touched somebody's life who I'd never ever dreamed I'd meet, and like 3 decades later, or 2.5 decades later, is serving in the restaurant where me and my wife are having a nice brunch. You know, so NATO's, it's not this peaceful machine. It's not an alliance of let's keep the peace. They're, wherever NATO goes, the trouble follows. But that's again for another discussion. But Sweden was neutral until it joined NATO, and now it's not. Quite simple.
Till it's joined NATO. So there's a clear line in the sand. There's a catalyst there.
Oh God, yeah.
Basically, they joined NATO and they got dragged into issues that they really probably ought not to be in or want to be involved in, but
can't afford to be in.
Yeah, can't afford to be in the considering the price of a pint over there.
It all goes to benefits, mate. It all goes to feed Mohammed and Abdul.
Okay, so so we talked about things that are going on here. So let's just try and nail down on the real issues, because something that you just said to me, which did touch home to me, is that you alluded to the fact it's coming our way. Is what are you experiencing now? Because some of your videos, you say, well, this is 20 minutes from my daughter's house, and this is 10 minutes away from my friend. Sort of thing. Can you just explain what is actually going on the ground? Also, the second question is how the media are covering it, because I think this is really important.
Right. Let's start off with what's happening near me. About 18 months ago, there was a massive bomb in the north of Helsingborg, where I used to live and where my first Swedish love still lives, and her windows were crushed by the explosion. About 6 months after that, there was another bomb in Helsingborg when they blew up someone's apartment. Then there was a fire at a hotel, but it turns out that there was probably members of a gang who were staying at that hotel, and that top 2 floors were burnt down. Just 2 weeks ago or 10 days ago in Klippan, which is it's a sleepy little village, and a double homicide. They arrested a 40-year-old. They've not said what his ethnic background is, which leads you to believe that he's not Swedish, because if it was Swedish, they would have gone out with it straight away. Swedish guy did it. There was 4 shootings in Helsingborg under the past 2 months. Well, I mean, that's just Helsingborg, population 120,000, I think it is. Engelholm, where my ex-wife and
Can I just ask a quick question? Are these prescribed as terrorist events or domestic events?
Oh, these are. They think they're not coming out, but they think the double murder in Klippan was a robbery, and they murdered this old couple who were in the 70s, which is just diabolical. The bombings were probably gang related. That's it. I mean, I say I know a lot of people. A lot of my friends are still riding bikes. When I'm around them and they give me a buzz, do you want to come out for a Sunday ride? I do. I don't care what the other lots think, because I've got friends on both sides, and this is not their preferred way of doing business. It's bad for business. So again, it comes down to the ethnic minority gangs. They're pretty bloodthirsty lot. Foxtrot, probably the most violent of them. And me just mentioning them will probably put a target on me. I don't give a monkeys. I get threats, so I send them a telephone number, call me, let's meet up. I don't back down from anything, I never will. And, the violence, although mainly gang related, quite often what happens is if somebody's got a business deal that's gone wrong, to get the money back, they will contact a gang. They will send the gang to drive in the money. They used to go and shoot people in the leg, but now they prefer to put a bomb to send a message and then a note. You've got 2 days to pay what you owe. And it can be anything from £2,000 to £200,000. It seems like the preferred way of getting any message across now in Sweden is a bomb. And when you're letting a bomb off, or you're planting a bomb, I mean, there was a day school where they found an unexploded grenade in a day school. 2, 3-year-olds, a kid's going to see that, think it's a toy. It's got a goddamn grenade in the grounds of a play school, a daycare centre. How can they say that Sweden's safe? The violence is off the charts. I mean, when I went out, I did a gig a couple of weeks back on a boat. great gig, a wonderful gig. They filmed it actually for Swedish television. It's broadcast on the 31st of May in Sweden. I'll get a link and send it to you. And they interviewed me about my life being Rod Stewart. And now that I'm moving away from being Rod Stewart to being Michael Dean and concentrating on me writing and performing as me. And I walked through the town to go and get a burger. And I've been around the bush quite a few times. And I felt intimidated in my own city for the first time. When I say gangs, it were like gangs of 20, 15, 20 migrant gangs. And now what you've got is a younger generation of Swedes who are ganging together, and they are actually escorting groups of girls from one venue to the next so they don't get sexually harassed or intimidated by refugee gangs, foreign gangs. This is the state of Sweden now, which nobody wants to report. And in a couple of weeks, I'm going to start filming it. I'm going to do a Ross Kemp, and I'm going to actually go out on the streets and film it. And I'll take my dog with me because they'll keep away from me because I've got a 40-kilo dog Argentino. But I'm going to, they need to know it. And it's baffling, it's mind-blowing that it's got to a state where young Swedes are actually thinking about protecting the opposite sex because it's that intimidating in a small town. So if they're doing it in a small town, they're doing it in a big town. And then coming to the second question, which was, what are the government doing about it? The government in Sweden. When it comes to the media are doing everything they can to cover up what's happening because I think the media are aware now that there is a big enough movement, even in Sweden, that you're going to see civil unrest. It's just on the verge. It's on the edge of the abyss, Sweden. And I think now a lot of younger Swedish guys and foreigners. One of my daughters is dating an Albanian guy, a wonderful guy, hard as nails, and he's in the same frame of mind. And when I talk to him, he's like, I see a lot of things that you see, and I agree with what you say, but I can't really comment on anything you say because it's going to put me into trouble with my group of friends and my ethnic background, because a lot of the things that are happening in Sweden, Albanians are involved in it, as they are everywhere else. But he's got the same viewpoint as me. My other daughter, she's dating a guy who's Yugoslavian, and wonderful guy. I know the parents are wonderful people. They migrated to Sweden. They learnt Swedish. They got jobs. They are as Swedish as I am Swedish, if you understand me. They're Yugoslavian, but they're Swedish. I'm British, but I'm Swedish. And we all see it in the same way. The majority of the problems that Sweden faces today isn't with people who migrated there 30, 40 years ago. It's the people who migrated there 10, 15 years ago, who are now at a fighting age, and they've got no respect whatsoever for the country, and the media are petrified to highlight that, as are the government, because they think they're going to lose votes.
What you're talking about is effectively anarchy, is what you're saying. Now, I've got leads me to another question, because I have to try and be bipartisan as best as I can. What you're saying is, in the old days, there was mob-like mentality where if you're in the mob, you're fair game. What you're saying is,
well, I'm a West Ham fan, mate. I've been through all that in England. I'm an ICF. I'm a West Ham boy. And I've been through it.
Is that there's no rules, and the people that here are now redesigning Sweden in some way, shape, or form, and it's going to come our way eventually, or if not, it's already here. But the fact is that everything is arbitrary now. You talk about cannon fodder; it's all irrelevant. And effectively, as you said to me on the phone call I had with you the other day, is that you don't know whether or not you leaving the door, you're going to be coming home that night. Is that bad?
Well, not for everybody. We can't exaggerate it. I mean, if you look how often the bombings are, the chances are that innocent people are going to get caught up in it. It's just a statistic. It's a game. It's Russian roulette. You could be walking down the wrong street at the wrong time. Someone's planted a bomb, and boom, you lose a leg or you're gone. Or that a kid could have picked up that hand grenade at a day school, and 2 dozen children are gone. So when it's got to that point, you can't coat it and say that Sweden's safe. I can't with good conscience turn around and say the whole of Sweden is dangerous, because there's parts of Sweden where it's untouched. But that's because there's nothing there that these people want. The inner cities are where the majority of the bombings and shootings are, because that's where the gangs are. The sporadic murder in places like Klippan, which nothing ever happens in Klippan. I mean, a big day out for them is the Melody Fest, the Eurovision Song Contest yesterday. You know, nothing happens. But somebody obviously had something, money or whatever that somebody wanted, so they didn't just go in and beat them up, they murdered them. But if you're in a city, any city in Sweden, Uppsala, for example, 3 people shot in a barber shop, and you know that's not a danger to the public. I don't think so. It's in a square, 5 o'clock in the evening, and then the guy came on his little electric scooter and assassinated somebody in a restaurant. There's other people sat in the restaurant. It turns out that the guy who did that shooting was 15 years old, because when you're 15 or under, you can't be tried as an adult. So he'll probably get 6 months in a borstal, slap on his wrists, and he'll be a hero in his gang and come out and be promoted. So until they break that culture, they're never going to stop what's happening in.
So apologies about that, guys. I literally had a slight malfunction my end. Michael, we were talking about breaking the culture. Can you carry on?
Well, you know, I do know, as I've touched before, I know a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds. And when you bring people from a different culture, the first thing that any country where they relocate to, it should be in law that they have to assimilate. They have to become what we stand for, what we represent, and what we live for. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to cancel freedom of religion, because that's everybody's God-given right, no matter if it's Allah, Buddha, or Jesus Christ that you follow. But you have to live by the rule of the land. So, you know, and when you've got hatred, which is it's just bred and hate. Nobody's born hating. It's taught. You know, it's educated, if you can use that word in such a loose way. But until you break this cycle of hate against Christianity, against, you know, our culture, what we represent, drinking beer, eating bacon, you know, listening to music, respecting women, until that culture's broke, you're never going to break the cycle of violence, bombs, shootings, rape, and et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, you've got to look at the government, in particular the Swedish government. You have to look at what they're doing and what they're trying to do to make these people fit into our society. And as I can see it at the moment, that's absolutely nothing. They're bending over backwards and doing whatever they can for them to just do what they like. And the silencing people like me, they're shutting down people who go against the narrative. And as long as that happens, then it's just going to fall deeper and deeper into the hole. And it's going to be harder and harder to climb back out of that hole. So, yeah, unless you break this, it's like with the old days of the IRA, you know, the hatred was born, it was bred into people. And still to this day, the hatred for the English by the Irish is off the charts. And I've got many, many friends who are Irish. I've got family who are Irish. And, you know, I could get an Irish passport if I wanted to, which would make life in Europe a lot easier. But why should I do that when I'm proud to be a Brit? I am what I am. Take me for what I am. I'm not a violent man. I'm not a criminal. I'm just a father who is daily in fear for his children and the country where he lives.
Now,
does that make me an activist?
I think you're definitely someone that's speaking out. That's for sure. The one thing that something that I think about personally is that I was talking to someone a couple of weeks ago, and how society has changed from where I grew up in Plymouth in England, and it's changed massively. It's changed massively, and the thing is, it's slowly, cheeky monkey. You don't realise it. You don't see it changing, but with the advancement of social media, independent media, people like yourself reporting on stuff. But the problem is you're a single voice. Now, something I've just looked at very briefly, just online, is prison population in Sweden. So you go on then. By the sound of it,
if you're white, mate, if you're white, Swedish, and you do a crime and you get to prison, you are in serious trouble. I mean, You've got that guy in Britain who was acid attacked or hot water attacked a prison guard, the one who tragically murdered those young kids at a Taylor Swift dance-off. I mean, in Sweden, the immigrant population in Sweden vastly outnumbers the Swedes. And in Sweden, you can get prison for drink driving. You can get prison for many minor infringements, and you can end up with radicals. A lot of people go into prison in Sweden, they come out radicalized into Islam. And that's not me just saying that, that is a fact, you know. And a lot of people are afraid to go against it, so they join for safety, thinking they're going to get out of it when they get out of prison. And they can't, because once they're indoctrinated, that's it. They can't get out. I would imagine some of these people being shot are people who thought the same. Well, so I can get through my prison time and survive. I'll join this cult, this sect, this ideology, and I'll get out when I'm out. And they've tried to get out and they've been wiped out. You know,
I think
prisons in Sweden are a joke.
If I could try and say something, and I don't want to come across as I'm putting words in your mouth, but what you're saying is there's a massive, like a big scale impact on Swedish society from people that don't want to basically be Swedish, but basically reside in Sweden and just basically. I'm not saying it's anarchy. It's not.
Well, I'll say it straight out, Bradley. You know, I don't care. I say I don't care if someone tops me. I do care because I'm a kids. But I feel that strongly and that passionately about Sweden that this has to be said. The root problem to all of the problems with the violence, the bombings, the shootings, the rapes, it's an ideology one, and we can't get away from it. All these gang members, the fake Islamists, the drink, the smoke weed, and they do drugs, and until Sweden as a nation stand up and say, right, hold on a minute, look, listen, you're welcome in our country. We are a society of people who are human, we're giving, we want people to have a better life, but there has to be a stop. They have to put a stop to who they're letting in and how they're letting them behave when they're inside the country. If people don't address the fact and say straight out, Sweden has a monumental problem because of the race and the creed and the ideology that a lot of these people follow, they will never resolve it. Now, I don't want to sound like Tommy Robinson or any other who I think are lunatics who go on. This is just purely what I'm seeing with my own eyes. And when you read the statistics about the number of rapes, who commits them, mainly immigrants, the bombings, mainly immigrants, until you address it head on, you're never, ever going to stop it. And as I've said before, my fear is that have the Swedish got it in them to actually stand up and say, enough now. Because if the king or the government said, this is what we're going to do, the Swedish people will follow what their government say. And if they deport people for rape, if they deport people for bombing, if they deport people for shootings, when you see these crimes, a Swedish person shot somebody, it's not a Swede, they've got a Swedish passport. Give me a Swedish passport, that doesn't make me a Swede, I'm still British. And they're quite happy to lock up people like me for talking truths until they say, right, this is it now. We are at a point where society is going to goddamn collapse and the Sweden that many of us love will disappear until the government, just one simple statement, commit a crime. If you're with or without a Swedish passport, if you are not a Swede from birth, you are out the door. They will cut down the amount of crime overnight. That's my activist speaking in me.
Look at what they did in El Salvador. You know.
Yeah. Well, come on. Trump deported 300 of them, and guess what? The crime rates have stopped. Exactly, went down overnight.
El Salvador, rightly or wrongly, put thousands upon thousands of people in prison, but now they're one of the safest countries in the world.
Well, that's
I'm not saying you should send everybody to prison. I'm definitely not advocating that. And I don't understand.
There's got to be a deterrent, Bradley. There's got to be a deterrent, and the fact that I'm 63 and I'm prepared to sacrifice my life, not just for my children, but for a country which is not my native country. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of other people with the same frame of mind They want their children to grow up with the freedom and the happiness that we grew up. I say I'm 63. The 60s, 70s, 80s. 80s was the best decade ever, even though there were bombs going off because of the IRA and UDA, but it weren't like the level where it is in Sweden. But I want my children to be able to travel. I want them to be, and so it's not just a Swedish problem. You know, you send your kids off backpacking. Everybody backpacked 20, 30 years ago. They can't now because they're getting murdered in Thailand. It's a problem which is worldwide. There's no deterrent. People just don't seem to have any moral compass anymore. A life, they play Grand Theft Auto or whatever, and you kill somebody. They think that that's how it is in real life. But when you shoot somebody, they goddamn die, and you can't bring them back. And until governments all over the world take an approach that, right, you commit a crime, you're banged up for life or you're gone. It's never going to stop, you know? And Sweden should be an example that people don't want to recreate. Sweden have to do something drastic now to stop it before Sweden's lost.
I know, like I said to you, I never knew what direction we're going to go down anyway. I got a gut feeling, but you just mentioned about computer games. I do believe computer games is a big problem in society as well. All these shoot 'em ups,
massive problem.
It is not healthy. It's not normal to want to kill people, even on a computer game. And you look at all the mass shootings in America and that sort of stuff. I just, oh God, it horrifies me. But I do believe, I don't understand. You know, you look at Grand Theft Auto, for example. It's a massive, massive game, which I get it because it's fun and all that sort of stuff. But you know, you're robbing people, beating people up, and you're shooting people. What does that tell people? I want to be a man.
That sounds like a day in Knightsbridge. You know, it does, doesn't it? You know, drive by on your electric scooter, which is probably going to blow up. You know, and burn your house down. Rob somebody of a Rolex or some old woman of her handbag. You know, because that's what they do on Grand Theft Auto. You know, get a gun, shoot somebody because you reset your game. As I said, you can't reset life, can you? You know.
Have you seen those videos online on YouTube where parents eventually decide to take their computer devices away from kids? And
yeah, well, we did that to our daughters when they were young.
The kids actually flip out massively, and to the extreme where this American kid, it's probably happened many times over, I imagine, killed his parents because they wouldn't allow him to play the computer game.
I know, insane. I mean, I believe in traditions. I mean, when I've got my girls or when I was married, we always had dinner at a certain time. We all sat down together, no mobile telephones. We just talked about the day, about the week, what's planned, what did you learn at school, have a dinner, say grace. Might sound like an old fart, but, you know, when I've got my kids with me, we set the table, we sit down and eat, we talk about aspirations, we talk about what's happening. And, you know, the family unit that I so dearly still desire, which has gone, for me is an integral part of how we live as people. You know, if you're not taught at home what's right and what's wrong and manners, you know, how are you going to expect the society to function? I'm very blessed with my kids that even though, you know, they've got 3 different mums, they're all good mates together, my kids, and they still believe in the family value. They call me for advice. I call them to ask them what's happening. When they're with me, we talk about everything that you should talk about. You know, safe sex, etc., is what you should do as a parent. If they have a problem, I expect them to call me. If they call me or the mother, call either of us. And me and the mothers will discuss what's happening. Family unit is a monstrously important part of society. And once again, moving back to the people who have come here, quite often, maybe they don't have a dad or they're from a broken family and they've got no role model, and their role model becomes the gang leader. And they try to emulate the gang leader because for them it's power. They've got a Rolex at 17 years old. Yeah. I've got a Rolex. I worked 10 years to buy it, you know. And the materialism that we've got in gang culture is, you know, some of them get marks every time they take a life. They've got tattoo for every life they've taken, you know. This is how serious it is. And when they take the shirt off, they go like, oh, look at him. He's took so many lives. Like, that's a hero. For me, a hero is somebody like Bobby Moore, who were a football player. It's Chris Eubanks, like him or hate him. who's a great advocate for boxing, who instills family values. Nigel Benn, it's sportive. Dave Bedford going back in the day, and Linford Christie. It's Frank Bruno. These people who are top of the game, and they never turn to violence or crime to get where they're getting. When you've got role models only about crime and destruction, how the hell do we expect our kids to grow up being normal?
Yeah, and there's actually, sadly, there's more of them than us, so to speak.
Oh God, yeah, there is.
The so one thing that, for example, people coming to a new country with nothing, they don't even know how to write a CV or basically nationalize themselves, I suppose, to
Yeah.
like use the word culture and stuff like that, or even the language, even the but they know how to muckrake and basically
Yes.
earn their coins in one way, shape, or form. Because you have to.
Well, that's down to the government. That's the government's fault, isn't it? That's the government's fault. You've got to lay that flatly on the shoulders of government for not having a policy and not having the network and the tools. So when people come to relative countries like Sweden, that they have to learn how to be Swedish. They can keep their own identity. But we live this way in Sweden. Learn it or you have to leave. It's not being a racist. It's not being so that the culture and the way we like to live our lives stays intact. So you've got to blame that on the government, and you've got to blame
The your one thing I will say, right, and my partner's from Czech, and she come here at the age of 18 in the UK. One thing I will say is immigration is fantastic when done right. There is
I agree totally. I agree totally.
so many amazing people here in the UK supporting our vital services. Even like, I would say even
Definitely.
food people, waitresses and waiters, without them,
Yeah, sure.
who would serve them, or serve the people. And
That's just the same in Sweden.
and so what I want to clarify is that you're not saying that immigration is wrong, but what you're saying is there's something very wrong with what's happening at the moment. And it's
Well, I mean, half of my friends here in Sweden are immigrants. I'm an immigrant myself. I pay taxes, I work, I speak the language. Most of the restaurants and venues I play at, they've got people from Poland, Hungary, Bulgaria. They all work, they all want to fit into society, they want to buy a house, they want nice things, and they don't go out and steal it or rob it. They work for it. Without immigration, I wouldn't have been in Sweden. I wouldn't have had a fascinating life and married three beautiful women if immigration wasn't allowed. You've met your partner. My ex-partners, I would never have met them without immigration. And this immigration is a vital part to our societies. It's a vital part to all of our basic needs, immigration. But if you're coming in a dinghy or you're crossing over a bridge with no intention at all to work or live legally, then they're the ones that shouldn't be allowed in. I don't want to push my religion down your throat. I don't want you to push your religion down my throat. I don't want to feel intimidated walking down the street because I've got white skin. They shouldn't feel intimidated walking down the street because they've got a brown skin or a black skin or a yellow skin. But you've got to have a concrete idea about what you're going to do with people when they arrive. And just throwing them into an estate with people in Malmo, for example, 157 different languages are used in Malmo. When you go into any of the services, like the tax office or anything, the first language in Malmo is Arabic. Now, how are they going to assimilate? How are they going to fit into society when the Swedish government are bending over backwards to make it easier for them not to learn Swedish? I mean, it's basic. I mean, anybody with half a brain can actually resolve these problems. It's just that I don't think the governments actually they don't want to solve it. They're quite happy to watch people like me disappear,
Yeah, okay. I've got a question for you then.
Yeah.
Right. You're a bit of a mouthpiece, yeah? The why not you go and be a councillor or governor in your government and that sort of stuff?
Well, I'm actually meeting with a member of SD in 2 weeks. That's the Swedish Democrats, which is, say, my party, which was classed as extreme right wing, because they've actually asked me if I'm interested to get into politics, because I've got a big following because of my music, and because I'm an immigrant myself. It's quite often, if somebody who's an immigrant, even though they don't look at me and say, "Ooh, an immigrant," because I'm British, and they say they like our culture. But I've been approached to actually stand to be a councillor, and I'm seriously considering it. I am seriously considering it, because then it'll give me a bigger platform to get over the message that I've got to give out. So, funny you should bring that up, because I'm actually thinking about that being my next avenue in life.
Well, it makes a sensible step. I speak to politicians. I was with a councillor a week Saturday ago, and he said to me, I've said to you for years, you should be a councillor. I said, but the problem is you can't get anything done. So what's the point?
No.
Now, on that point, what would you do if you were the councillor or someone with authority and power in Sweden? How would you redesign Sweden? I'm not saying it as a whole, but how would you try and navigate it moving forward if you had the authority?
It's a very, very interesting question to put, because it's not an easy fix. But the first thing I'd do is I would make it mandatory deportation. If you rape somebody, if you shoot somebody, if you're involved in any type of major crime, I don't care who you are, where you're from, not just you, but your whole family's gone. Because if you make it to a unit so that mum and dad and brothers and sisters are booted out of the country because you've committed crime, that's going to cut down crime immensely. I'd make it mandatory that you have to learn the language. Not everybody's got the ability to learn to speak a foreign language. Swedish is very difficult. Give them 5 years, 6 years, but set some sort of limit on the time so that they have to learn Swedish. Because if you're not going to get a job in the workplace if you can't speak the language, so I'd make deportation straight away for serious crime, and I'd make speaking and writing and reading Swedish mandatory. That'd be the first 2 steps that I'd take.
Right, okay.
And without a deterrent, you're never going to change anything.
Yeah.
So, I mean, does that make me an activist? Does that make me it's a massive hole. It's a massive rabbit hole. And how are you going to do it? Because you're going to be swimming against the tide with the government you're working with. Because the wokeness is monstrous. And as I've said to my gay friends, I said, you're all right, protesting for their rights, and when they get into power, when they take over this country, you'll be the first one thrown off a building because you're gay. Don't you understand that? They're using the wokeness to infiltrate society. I mean, people can say what they want about Trump, but he's on the right track. He's doing what he thinks is best for America. It might not be. In history, it might go down as being a monumental mistake. But Trump's convinced that he's doing the right thing to save America. And without sounding Trumpite or sounding like an extreme right-winger, if you can't master the language of the country you're living in, what good can you give to that society if you can't even master the language? Mm-hmm. It's a basic given. You have to learn the language. You have to be whatever your religion is. I don't care, but just don't throw it down other people's throats. You can't have Muslims out protesting and Christians do it and it's banned.
I must admit.
I'd make one more point on that. I would make divorce that it has to be like a 1 or 2 year period. Oh, how's my battery going out? I've got 10% left, so we're gonna have to make it quick.
Yeah. What I will say, you've mentioned religion quite a few times, and I believe religion's got a lot to be answered for. However, I'm of no authority, so all I say is that I hear many people talk about their religions and how we should listen to this person, that person. I remember a very famous quote from Ricky Gervais, the comedian.
Oh, I love Ricky. I love him.
I do believe he's the autonomy of freedom of speech. I love him. And he said to me, not to me, sorry. He said, I believe in God, but I don't know which of the 3,000 gods I should believe in. The, which is very true, and he got hated for that. He gets hated for many things.
Oh, it does, but he's brilliant. He's a genius. He's a
What,
genius of our
he's
time, Ricky.
very, very, very clever man. And the thing is,
Yeah.
he's one of probably only a few comedians that have been saved from basically, you can't say that. He just said it as a joke, you know.
Well, they
And
took Jim down, didn't they? They took Jim down. They took Jim Davidson down.
took many,
Yeah.
many people down, but he survived, and quite rightly so. Let's try and end on something that, in terms of how would you like, okay, in an ideal world, let's talk about utopia, for example. How would you like things to be in 20 years' time for you?
I won't be here in 20 years, but I mean, I won't be here. I know that for a fact medically.
Is that because there's too much sex, drugs, and rock and roll?
I wish. I wish. It's a lack of all three. No, but in 20 years, I mean, I won't be here because of medical reasons, because what happened to me from the COVID-19 vaccine, but that's for another story. I mean, I know I've got limited time on Earth now, but an ideal world, what I would like, I'd like that we all got on. I'd like that in Sweden, people went back to being proud of being Swedish. I'd like for people to understand that tolerance is fine, being dumped on isn't. I want us to take back our streets, make it safe. I want my grandchildren to grow up and be proud to be British heritage and Swedish heritage, not be ashamed of the skin tone. And that goes for all races, all creeds, all colours. We should all be very proud of what we are, what we represent. And you should stand when your national anthem is played and be damn proud about our history and our heritage. The only way we can do that is to stop mass immigration, stop the bombings and stop the shootings with hard, harsh terms of imprisonment or deportation, so that our kids in the future can live the way that we lived back in the 80s. It's not a big wish. It's not an impossibility. It is a possibility that we can do it, but it's a probability that the governments just don't want the same agenda as we do. Ricky Gervais is a genius. I wish that he was sat in number 10, because we were living in a world where we laughed each day instead of walking around in fear.
Like I said to you, when we stopped a little bit earlier, and I said we could talk for hours, and I love talking to older people, if I'm perfectly honest, because quite often they're wiser. And this is not barroom talk. This is serious issues that are affecting people here and now in 2025 May. And I'm hoping that people will wise up to things that are going on. And
well, the more of us that speak out, the better it's going to be. Sometimes you have to say, okay, this might cause me personal grief. I don't care, because it's for the greater good. And sometimes you just have to bite the bullet and just get it out there, and that's all I'm trying to do. I just want people to be aware of what's happening in Sweden, and that things have to change before Sweden disappears.
One final point before you introduce your final song. Like we mentioned Nigel Farage earlier, and politicians like Boris Johnson could be a similar one as well, albeit he's like chaotic as hell. But a lot of politicians are saying, and this is such, it kind of, the way I see it, they're playing massively with the young youth. They're saying that we are looking to appeal to the youth because they're our future, right? Which is obvious. Their future, but also they're making them angry, and they're making them, I believe, destabilized slightly as well.
Totally.
And we talk about culture, religion, and all that sort of thing. Create divide. I mean, I never knew growing up, for example, that you needed to hate black people, right?
I know.
or a Muslim, or you could be anti-Semitic. I wouldn't even know what that meant.
Nor did I.
I just knew them as people.
Yeah, when the National Front first came in Doncaster, and I was 14 years old, I went, what are these bunch of idiots? skinheads with Nazi stickers on their heads and everything. And luckily back then, a lot of my friends are black, you know, who I grew up with. And I always sided with them. And it's, you know, that was like the first testing waters for cultural baiting when the National Front and people like Tommy Robinson and Nigel Farage, I think they're just continuing in different ways to do it. Okay, Tommy Robinson, what he did, highlighting the grooming gangs was an amazing. He should have got goddamn OBE for that. But then he's turned away from just concentrating on that and he's become sort of a political nightmare, you know, with his ideologies now. And reform, they might have the right idea, I don't know. I've not studied them enough because I'm just concentrating on Sweden and SD and their philosophy about keeping Sweden Swedish. I mean, I don't hate anybody, Bradley. I don't hate anybody. I don't want to hate anybody, and I'm certainly not going to hate somebody because they tell me to on the news or, you know, this or that, or because one friend don't like this black person, I shouldn't like him. As I've said before, I like everybody. I judge everybody by the person that I meet, not by where they're from or what they do or what they say. Yeah. You know, it's if you're a good person, you're a good person. If you're shit, you're shit. There's no way around it, is there?
Yeah, you just move on, don't you?
You do.
You just try and dodge them. Now, okay, just to remind people, where do people find you online?
On TikTok, it's englishman.in.sweden. On Instagram, it's Stewart, Stewart, Rudders, RUDDERS. And on Facebook, it's Michael Dean. Now,
what I want to remind people, the reason why I contacted Michael, because of what he's doing online,
he actually, I did ask the question, are you an activist? I don't believe he's an activist. I think he's someone sharing something that he's living and seeing. And he wants people to know. And hopefully someone will listen. People are listening to you. We know that. Thank you for that, Bradley.
And so so please just follow his journey. Who knows what it's going to be like? I know you've got other.
It's eye-watering. It's interesting, isn't it?
But the thing
got
is,
your attention.
Well, exactly. Yeah, you come on my radar. But the thing is, as well, is that you're doing this not for yourself. You're doing it just to make sure people are aware this is happening. And it's I can tell it saddens you what's going on in your country. I know you're a Brit, right? And you're through and through a Brit, but you've been in Sweden for 40 years, and you know you talk about it very romantically at the start, and not so much now.
Yeah.
Now let's close on here. We're definitely going to talk again, that's for sure. With your final song.
Right. Well, my final song is one called I Was Only Joking. It's pretty much the story of my life. I mean, some of the lines are Rod Stewart at his ultimate best. Me and the boys thought we had it sussed, Valentinos, all of us. My dad said we looked ridiculous, but boy, we broke some hearts. In and out of jobs, running free, waging war with society. Dumb black faces stared back at me, but nothing ever changed. That's just a couple of lines from the song. Rod Stewart, underestimated songwriter, underestimated singer, and I Was Only Joking really is an autobiographical song about my life.
Thank you very much.
Here I am at 63, single and happy.
I was a kid at school. I messed around with all the rules. Apologized then, realized I'm not different after all. Me and the boys thought we had it sussed. Valentinos, all of us. My dad said we look ridiculous, but boy, we broke some hearts. In and out of jobs, running free, waging war with society. Dumb blank faces stare back at me, but nothing ever changed. Promises made in the heat of the night, creeping home before it got too light. I wasted all that precious time and blamed it on the wine. I was only joking, my dear, looking for a way to hide my fear. What kind of fool was I could never win, never win. Never found a compromise, collected lovers like butterflies. Illusions of that grand first prize are slowly wearing thin. Susie, baby, you were good to me, giving love unselfishly, but you took it all too seriously. I guess it had to end. I was only joking, my dear, looking for a way to hide my fear. What kind of fool was I could never win, never win. Yeah, baby. Woo! Now you ask me if I'm sincere. That's the question that I always fear. First seven is never clear, but I'll tell you what you wanna hear. I'll try to give you all you want, but giving love is not my strongest point. If that's the case, it's pointless going on. I'd rather be alone. 'Cause what I'm doing must be wrong, pouring my heart out in a song, owning up for prosperity for the whole damn world to see. Quietly now, while I turn a page, Act 1 is over without costume change. The principal would like to leave the stage. The crowd don't understand.